Yeah, very excited for chat to embarrass me in an immortalized video format. Welcome to the second edition of our monthly State of the Game stream, where we talk about all things Tough Love Arena. We also have an exciting balance patch coming up right after the end of the stream. Also an exciting announcement. What to expect in this talk. What did we accomplish last month? We're going to break it down into different categories. Present didn't make a lot of sense to me last month, so this time we're going to do it as what is the state of the game from a game balance perspective, and you can compare the presents month by month, and hopefully the game's getting better. How are things going forward? A little health check segment where I want to talk about some concerns I've seen in the Discord about the game in terms of population and cash. We're gonna talk about that stuff at a very high level. And then the Q&A, which will go for as long as they have questions / I'm up for it. Last time on the state of the game. This was the slide from last month of what I was planning for the future, and the things highlighted in bright green are what we got done. I'm very proud of this. We finished ironing out some of the major kinks with the ranked and leaderboard. I know there are some bugs. I'll circle back to that later. As far as getting to like the proof of the concept, confidence in the MMR ranges, all that stuff, adding the 4th rank, that work's all done. The great depowering was like a solid week of work, not to mention all the follow-up patches and little fixes. It hasn't been as advertised. It shows up in the changelogs sometimes. We've been making a lot of progress on network tech debt, splitting out servers and stuff. Last week we mentioned that we're working on Noodle and Rice. Noodle is done. I was maybe a little prematurely optimistic on the Android iOS desktop release. I didn't get to those. When I had the time to not work on features, I just focused on the tech debt because there's still more server work to do. And premium accounts, I realized, were sort of blocked by that server work because I don't want to be taking credit cards unless I have the utmost confidence in our infrastructure. Not too worried about the stuff that we missed. Very proud of the stuff that we hit. These are some of the features that we shipped. We finished the sort of current implementation, I don't want to say final, but the current implementation of parries, where they're fast, not very active, with punishable, -5 on block, parryable, that kind of stuff. The great depowering went out, Noodle got animated. I'm very proud of a lot of the progress that we made both on balance, on new combat features like counter hit, single player content like the boss characters, and of course network stuff like the improvements to leaderboard and ranked. Infrastructure side, there was this honestly embarrassing huge bug where our system for buffering inputs through hit stop, so like when you make contact with someone and things sort of freeze for a couple of frames, is supposed to buffer your inputs during that so that if you nail that cancel on frame 1 from, heavy punch into palm, it will work. That worked all fine and good. I think I added it in like February, and then it took us like 3 months to discover that it didn't work correctly with delay. That was a big one to have done. I was very sad to discover it, but I got it fixed in a day. It explained a lot of bugs that we thought were mobile related, and as far as like input imprecision. Did a lot of infra work. Can I highlight? Does that work? The laser pointer. Yes! Okay, we're in business. This is the sort of infrastructure I talked about. Fixed some long-running training mode bugs. Worked a little bit more on menus and stuff. Also improved online calibration. Very proud of that. That seems to have been a net positive. That's working out. There was a big infra task I spent a lot of days on that's still not done. But again, a lot of this stuff's invisible. So we're making progress. Community stuff. It's really important to me that we focus and spend time on the community, on the people in stream chat right now, on the players, because this is a beta, but it's been a very public beta, and we've been very fortunate and very grateful and blessed to have as many players as we've had, and we want to take care of them. And I think definitely in the first couple months, I was almost consciously ignoring stuff. I was just like ignoring tournaments, ignoring people reaching out to me because I was just too overwhelmed with the fact that we had just launched and there were a million bugs. I was still trying to work 2 jobs at the time. Looking back, I regret some missed opportunities, and I wish I had done more to directly support the scene. And so I would say really starting in May is when we started making a concerted effort. Doing stuff like general surveys for people, getting feedback in a more data form than just me reading Discord, right? Adding more interaction, adding more stuff to dev streams, so it's a little bit more interesting than just watching me do this for like 2 hours. Adding more rewards for our patrons. For the first 3 months, it was just thanks for the $5. But now we have some soft incentives. You get early access to stuff, little digital meetups where we usually talk about balance. You can sort of have the emperor's ear, if you wish. We are making an effort to link more community resources from within the game. People have done amazing work on the Museum Wiki and writing these like dozen-page long character guides. We do have to be careful because these can very quickly go out of date, but it's an incredible effort and I really want to recognize it and appreciate it. And lastly, more work on the events page. I'm really excited about the events page not only as a one-stop shop for people to come and see if I want to watch a TLA stream, when is it happening, when are tournaments, that kind of stuff. But almost more important to me is to have a record, to have a history of all the cool stuff that we in the community have done over the last couple months, over the last year. And so having the ability to see past events was really exciting. Let's talk about the Great Depowering a little bit more. This is the first 2 questions on the survey, and they were the most important ones to me. I can't remember where I first heard this. As a game designer, you get a lot of feedback. You really want to listen to the feedback from players who are having problems. Players are really good at identifying problems. You know, this seems too strong, this seems too weak, this is frustrating, this is broken. Players have, can play the game so much more and test it so much more than I can, and they bring unique perspectives and ideas, and they play a lot better than I do. And so it's really important to listen to the players for identifying problems. However, sometimes players will also come to you with solutions, and that's where you have to take with a grain of salt. Not pointing any flags, not naming anyone by name. This is just a general tactic when you are working on a game and you're getting a deluge of feature requests and stuff. People can be really good at identifying problems, but maybe not as precise at prescribing the answer. It's my job to sort of filter suggestions, figure out the correct way forward when I have this more higher level holistic approach. So I started off the survey. There was a lot of other questions in the survey, but the first 2 questions were these. How do you feel about the game balance, and how do you feel about the game being fun? Which are 2 very different things. A game can be very balanced, it can be footsies, but that doesn't necessarily make it fun. No shade on footsies, cool game. But the thought experiment, Ryu vs. Ryu is balanced, but if that's all your game has, is that fun? And likewise, your game can be fun, but horribly unbalanced. Marvel. It's important to me to track both of these. And the important thing is that they both are overall positive. They're net positive. Even if the survey was negative, that doesn't mean I'm immediately going to revert everything. I have to trust my intuition and my judgment as the developer, but this was validating. And it's important to me that the game is the best game it can be, and that also me and the community are on the same page. Digging in a little deeper, I would categorize them in these large bins. I'm sure people in chat will disagree on 1 or 2, but in my mind, the well-received changes were changes to throw as far as the range, the rules, how active they were, stuff like that. Didn't see any complaints and quite a few compliments, actually. Noodle and Rice having their damage reduced. There were a couple people that were like, oh, I missed the loops, and that was cool, but these were also agreed as the right move. Rice's new move, splitting up SWAT, was well received. Hopkick changes to be less polarized in the matchup. The fact that Hopkick was uniquely terrible against Rice because it could be caught by a random SWAT, but overall way too strong against Whip. It was like a cool little matchup thing, but it could create really degenerate situations. These were all good. I'm super happy with these. Some changes that people weren't really excited about, but have been overall accepted, were the walk speed nerfs and the removal of most of the empty cancels. Most of the empty cancels. We'll get to that in a second. But a lot of them, like Noodles and Rices, were replaced with other options. Not necessarily better or comparable options, but other options. However, more contentious changes included Grounder, basically. Onion, just getting way less combo opportunities, and of course Garlic's backflip. Can't please everyone, and I'm not surprised that the the controversial stuff are basically 2 nerfs and a buff to the zoner, but I'm very pleased with how this went overall. I'm glad, and I hope people can understand why we sort of did it all at once, just to sort of rip the band-aid off. Because a lot of these, like the walk speed nerfs and the hop kick changes and the Onion conversion nerfs, were a long time coming, and I didn't want to release it as just a random patch that appeared to kill Onion. I wanted to do it in the context of everyone being slowed down and all this other stuff. Shy Ninja asks, what are empty cancels? Normally when you cancel a move, you do it during the active frames when it has made contact with the opponent. You can only cancel punch into palm if it made contact with the opponent and they're in hit stun or block stun, right? You can't whiff punch. I keep punching the camera. You can't whiff punch into palm. I call that a normal on hit or on block cancel. And some moves can only cancel on hit, some moves can only cancel on block. Most moves can cancel in either scenario if they can cancel at all. And an empty cancel was like Garlic's dash, where there's this ambiguous period in the middle of the dash where you can then cancel it into a different move like sneak, dash back, or trip. That was in Garlic from day one. I thought that it would be cool to add some complexity to other characters, so Noodle had the ability to, during the startup, ambiguously somewhere in the middle of the startup of Fist, if you press an R button, it would turn into a different distance fist. This was really exciting for players because you had more options, but one, it was hard to get a feel for because you're not doing it on active frames where you're getting that nice big hit stop buffer, and it's very obvious when to do it. And two, it was a logistical issue for mobile. It was hard, if you're playing with your thumb, to jump quickly from H to L when you don't have the benefit of hit stop. It's in the middle of like a 12-frame startup move. That's a very small window. It was cool, but we found other places to put the complexity, basically. Gameplay design. We're into the present. This is how I feel about the game right now. From a system level, from sort of, across the board, I think damage is in a good place. Even with counter hit. I know some people are concerned about counter hit, but I think it's okay. All subject to change. I think the meter gain and burst frequency is in a good place. I think knockout versus timeout frequency is in a good place. I do think that corner carry was too strong. It's still a little too strong, but it's on the right track. The idea of I get just a single hit with Noodle and suddenly I've carried my opponent all the way to the corner. Now I have the whole stage to walk back. That's part of why one of the nerfs to both Noodle and Rice, that Whip Splash no longer sends them like flying, guaranteed full screen. It's more of like a little So we've made a lot of changes to reduce corner carry. The big outlier is Pork Caber Toss, which we'll talk about on the Pork slide, but we're making progress. As far as really recent changes that are kind of high level, I think parries are in a great place. I think we were really successful at defining a niche for them and really differentiating them from armor, and they feel like different moves now, and they have a competitive space, and they're fun to do. The walk speed is in a good place. The reason for the walk speed changes was, one, there's an oversight where the carbs were the same speed as the meats. They were always intended to be slower. It was just a goof. And two, having a really high walk speed on a game that's meant to be played on not the best connections and will inevitably have rollback is a recipe for really disorienting teleports. And we're already doing so much of our design with the intention of rollback, with the intention of playing on mobile Wi-Fi, like the fact that every move has minimum 6 frames of startup. That is an intentional design choice so that rollbacks are less jarring. The really high walk speed of Onion and Rice were not in line with that general gameplay design. So I needed to bring them down just a little bit, just to make a little bit of difference, make it a little bit nicer on the eyes, and I brought down the other characters to sort of compensate. This also indirectly helps corner carry. When you're walking into your opponent, when you're comboing them, when you've knocked them down and you're pursuing, this is all worse. And it also indirectly fixed a lot of my Onion problems that I was struggling to fix by tweaking the roundhouse and stuff. I think the throw changes are a success. No one's complained about those. I'm very happy with them. Carb 4H being a unique command normal has been a welcome design expansion. This is something I wrestled with a lot before the Great Depowering. Tough Love Arena has all these sort of unwritten rules about its design. You know, you have a light medium special. Everyone's forward special is jump. It doesn't have to be that case. Some of the boss characters don't have that, right? But it's a convention that you can know and use to easily pick up other characters and understand what other characters are doing. Conventions are powerful. They're wonderful. I had created this convention where the light and heavy button were identical for a class of character. Onion and Rice, if you press light or heavy, it's all the same moves, and they only diverge on their special button. I needed somewhere to put basically another zoning tool for Noodle, and I needed somewhere to put the second half of Swap when I split it up, but I felt really uncomfortable about the idea of breaking that rule, that ultimately arbitrary rule, that H should be the same for Noodle and Rice. But I broke it, and I think it's been a great success. It's added more depth to the character. It's made them more interesting. I still don't plan to change 4H for Beef. I like them as the sort of neutral, most footsies-based character, and it definitely is a learning curve that if you want to walk back and then whiff Punisher with Whip, you have to walk back and then reset to neutral before you whip, right? And Beef will never have that problem. This doesn't mean we've opened the floodgates and every character is going to have like 5 more command normals now, but I wanted to highlight it because I assume players didn't think of it as like a big deal, and for me it was a big deal. Let's talk about Noodle. All IMO. And we could talk about this in the Q&A. We could talk about this if you're on Patreon, or we could talk about this during dev streams. Over the last month, Noodle's damage has been nerfed, and that's been good. New Fist, the simplifying of Fist from being like this 2-hit capture move into just a single BAM that can now combo into itself, strictly better. Everyone loves it. Grounder is divisive. It's pretty strong, but it has fixed the problem of Noodle just feeling like too similar to Rice, like Rice with worse combos, or Rice with a Frenzy. Now Noodle actually plays neutral differently, has additional tools that you have to account for, and so you play against Noodle differently than you play against Rice. That I'm very excited about. A lot of people complained about Grounder, especially in the first couple weeks. We did a couple bug fixes, to be fair. We fixed like the meter gain and stuff. But I think over time people have just adjusted to be a little bit better, and every community tier list I see doesn't really put Noodle in like the top 2 or 3. I know people can still be frustrated by the archetype, the Dhalsim type character, that Death by 1,000 Cuts. That is the design I had intended for Noodle from the start, and I think Noodle has done a great job of getting closer to that goal. So, Noodle, okay. No changes planned. Rice. SWAT splitting up into 2 moves, not having a weird empty cancel, fixed a lot of problems. I liked Swipe, but because it had to come after Swap, it had to have like this really inflated startup because you needed to fit a SWAT in the startup. And now it's just its own move. It's his own neutral chip move. I love the niche that I was able to give Rice in their cancels, where now Rice can do this little frame trap mind game of either doing the not true block string of whip into swipe, or feinting with whip into swat, or just doing nothing. I'm very happy with Rice's core gameplay. I will admit, especially from personal experience, I went watching the Tough Love Gauntlet from like 2 weeks ago, Rice definitely struggles with the Noodle matchup. I think the big problem is that the answer to Noodle, the answer to Grounder, really is to walk forward. And Rice is just that much slower than the meats, and especially the spices. So even though when Rice gets within whip range, they should be like a kind of better Noodle, the fact that it's that much harder for them to get into that range is a problem. Also, teleport is basically worthless against Noodle, because whip range is just too far. I know Rice has some problems, but they're really specific to that matchup, and we'd have to be careful adjusting Rice. We don't want to give something that allows Rice to fight Noodle, but then is just like a strict upgrade in all the other matchups. That's why I label Rice as mostly okay. I want to change Rice. I recognize that there are problems, but I don't have an immediate solution. If Rice doesn't get a big balance patch in the next month, it's because we haven't come up with a good thing yet. But plan on some slight adjustments sometime soon. Beef! Let's talk about Beef. I think New Flex is a massive success. Having that option as a one-frame anti-air in case someone jumps over a late Lemon is really important to Beef's zoning kit and indirectly massively buffed Lemon. Lemon frame data is still in a difficult place to balance. You gotta be careful with Lemon. I talked about this a lot in the last state of the game of we're trying to balance both for a high-level gameplay and also to make sure that there isn't a clear scrub killer. But I think with the addition of having the quick twitch anti-air of Flex, Lemon indirectly is back to being a viable zoning tool. That and walk speed nerfs. I saw some specific complaints in the Discord about Gut Punch into Lemon. So you can cancel Gut Punch into Lemon on hit or block, and in either case it's not a true combo. People were complaining about that. That is intentional. It is fake. It will always be fake. My recent change to the timing makes this little fake out much more consistent if you want to go for it. If you want to have the 1000 IQ reads, feel free to bait the light punish and go for a flex. I'm overall happy with this Palm and Spike changes. I like that Palm got a little bit weaker, and now you have to actually decide if you want to try and hit confirm into uppercut. I think Palm got a little overused in tournaments in late April, early May, and so now it's a legitimate choice. It also resets to neutral, pushes them a little further out, so Beef can resume their zoning. And Spike just had some minor adjustments, a little bit more damage to make it more appealing as a combo ender in corner where you get worse Oki, a little bit more distance. If you're mid-screen, you can't just walk up and get a meaty. I'm very pleased with Beef. I think Beef is in a great place. Let's talk about Pork. In my opinion, new Chop is working as intended. You can't just like spam chops at max range and have the player be like, I'm a Spice and I'm cornered, how do I get out of this armor nightmare? Now if they keep doing it, they'll eventually get close enough that you can punish on block. I'm really happy with Chop where it currently is. Caber Toss is a work in progress. This is the problem. I was watching some Pork footage. You need to get in. They're a grappler. They're sort of mid-range gut, but they're not quite as Zanky. If they're really more of like an Abel or a Laura or, you know, even an Akali, some sort of hybrid footsie slash little bit of grappler mix-up. But they are often viewed primarily as a grappler because they're the only character in the game with that strong of a mix. And so the Pork game plan, especially against like Noodle and Rice, is to get in. If you can get corner, then getting in is a lot easier. That's what Pork wants to do, right? Pork wants to get you into the corner. But I realized the problem with Toss's current implementation, where it tossed straight up, but with like an unreasonably high juggle counter, so you couldn't actually get a hard knockdown unless you ended the combo really early with Spike or Chop. The problem with the toss is that you really just needed to get in once, and then you basically had a virtual corner, because you could just keep resetting, do toss, jab, and then mix into toss or into light, and Pork sort of had a portable corner. When I wanted Pork to only get the really scary mix, the repeated mix, the constant 50-50 over and over again, if they earned it, if they pushed you all the way to the edge of the screen. So I was like, okay, well, how can I fix the problem, the fact that Pork can just get in once, force 5 guesses, and win the game? How can we fix that? Well, the problem is that they land right in front of Pork, and so Pork has a 50-50 again. Let's have the toss send them further away. Now, Pork can't reach for a follow-up unless they spend meter. And it's okay to put cheap stuff behind meter because that's still limited to, 3 coin tosses if you wrap it twice. This is going to be great. It's going to fix the mid-screen corner. And instead it created the problem, well, now Pork just gets the real corner. Pork just gets the real corner a lot easier. Pork still just gets one toss and then bam, gets the real corner and then can loop the 50-50. Caber can't currently be RC'd, but what you can do, even with the increased distance, is you can Caber and then immediately punch into uppercut and then RC there. And I decrease the juggle count. It's possible. So this was a mistake, obviously. And I've been working on a fix for like the last week. I showed a little bit on a dev stream. Still ironing out the details. I don't want to totally kill the character. I want to keep some interesting options for meter. I can come up with an option where you don't get the mix, but I like the idea that meter gave you a mix. So I just need to find a way where meter can give you the mix, but it doesn't give you crazy corner carry. But again, it's really just that small Caber corner thing. Otherwise, I think Chop and all their normals are in a very good place. Next character. Let's be frank, Onion was hurt bad by the walk speed and hop kick nerfs. They could no longer convert off of a lot of roundhouse situations. They could no longer get the junk, a combo off meaty, which you could get in a whiff punish scenario very reliably at max range sweep. If that didn't make any sense, basically, Onion could meterlessly combo off hop kick, and we took that away in the great depowering. We took away the walk speed, which made it harder to follow up roundhouse. These both hurt the character, but this was very intentional. A big focus of the Great Depowering was how the variations were overshadowing each other. Beef felt like a worse pork, rice felt like a worse noodle because noodle had crazy good damage, garlic felt like a worse onion. And one of my original intentions was that garlic would have the unique ability across the entire cast to be able to convert into knockdown off of basically any hit. Into like good knockdown with Oki. And onion functionally had that too. So we took it away. And the onion players were sad, and I apologize, and I totally get it. This wasn't a punishment for any particular player doing well with onion, even though onion was stacking the tournaments. It was more about, philosophically, why play garlic. Even though garlic got some nerfs too, and we'll get to that in a second, I think garlic has more of a case to make, with the fact that any roundhouse you land, you just sneak, you get the knockdown. And, even with all that said, even with all those bans hitting onion, onion's still good. Onion's still viable. And so that to me is more proof that like we did the right thing. If onion's fine now, how crazy strong were they before? As mentioned, parry changes are a strong net positive. I'm still open to making onion's parry a little bit more unique than beef's. I really liked the old parry. It really hurt me to get rid of the hype Evo 37 parrying all hits of frenzy type interaction, but that sort of freeform parry had a lot of problems and opened up really big conversions. There could still be a time and a place where we bring something like that back, but the current solution was a blunt, if effective, fix for capping the sort of max possibility on parry. Onion got hurt by stuff. Onion got indirectly buffed by counter hit, having the longest combos, but I think Onion's in a good place. Long term, I'd like to reevaluate the parry, just in the specifics of the reward you get, but I have no plans to change any of Onion's frame data anytime soon. Take a little sippy sip from this extra cup back here. Let's talk about garlic. Garlic was also hurt by the walk speed nerfs. Not as much. Garlic still has dab, garlic still has conversions. A big nerf to garlic though was backflip. Backflip had a bunch of empty cancels that gave them the ability to backflip. You would still have the same number of invuln frames, but you could cancel basically your landing recovery into the startup of jump or roundhouse. And the idea behind the original change is, in my mind, backflip still serves the purpose of being frame 1 invulnerable, it still serves the purpose of being really good mid-screen, and it's still punishable in all the same routes. Because you either have I'm going to make up the numbers right now, but you either had 10 frames of recovery on backflip, or you had 4 frames of recovery and then 8 frames of startup on roundhouse. So the same punish of, oh, you backflipped, I'm going to heavy punch it, would work even if you tried to go for something fancy. That's why it felt safe to add. And then when I'm coming through with the Great Depowering and I'm trying to axe as many empty cancels as I can for the sake of basically fixing mobile issues, bringing back some of the complexity creep that was unnecessary, I looked at these backflip changes and I was like, these don't seem super important. Psh! And I deleted them. And then I learned in the following days that a lot of garlic players really liked those. They really liked those options. They really liked doing backflip into roundhouse in the corner to have some sort of counter pressure. They really liked it mid-screen to sort of walk into range for your opponent's button, backflip, and then be able to whiff punish it. And these were all fair complaints. So we added dash back to solve the second situation. You can still jockey, sort of dab in and then dab out and try and whiff punish them punching your dab. But we did need to get rid of the options, because backflip into roundhouse is basically just a really long startup, awkward DP. I see people disagreeing. We could talk about it in the Q&A. The problem with the old backflip into roundhouse, it was essentially competing with the design space of Frenzy. You had an option that was 1-frame startup and had an attack. And there was a gap of vulnerability that Frenzy didn't have, that's true. It's something that spiritually I didn't want Garlic to have. I wanted Garlic to have this really strong escape option that's still very strong mid-screen, but it didn't need to be a DP. It was never intended to be a DP. All of that said, and I believe all that very strongly, I do recognize that Garlic, I think, struggles a little too much in the corner. So similar to Rice, I have some vague ideas, and it needs a lot more testing. Maybe something similar to Teleport, like a limited backflip out of corner, just so that Garlic has some defensive option they can do when they're getting pressured in corner. I don't want them to uniquely be that bad, but they're not supposed to have a DP. Please keep that in mind. So I also rate Garlic as mostly okay. I see some comments about dashback. Happy to improve that, because it has a role that I want to fulfill. But in terms of designing their set, that's the state of Garlic. I'm looking for maybe something I could do with backflip to make it work in the corner, but otherwise I'm happy with Garlic's normals, I'm happy with dab, I'm happy with sneak. I think Garlic is in a good place as the more annoying onion. So that's the end of the present. That's how I feel about the game. I think the systems are in an overall good place. Noodle's okay. Rice just needs a little bit of extra help. Beef's okay. Pork has a K-Brew rework coming soon. Onion's okay. And Garlic is similar to Rice, pending maybe a small little rework. Feel free to disagree with me outside of the context of this stream right now. We can talk during Q&A. We can talk in the Discord. You can send me a Twitter DM. Always happy for feedback. Always trying to make the game as good as it can be. It's thanks to all the feedback from players and top players and everyone else and patrons that both the balance and the fun and the options have improved so much in the last 4 months, and we're very, very grateful. That said, I still say no sometimes. There have been some bonkers bad feedback and some awful suggestions. There's no bad questions. Feel free to shoot your shot, but I reserve the right to say no. Let's talk about what's coming up. Let's talk about exciting stuff. Upcoming content. We're going to have Mystery Meat out. Mystery Meat is almost done. The moveset's basically done, but the AI is terrible, and they're just playing Mystery Meat wrong. So it's really I need to work on the AI so that Mystery Meat is actually fun to fight, and then that'll be coming out soon. I'm aware of some of the big bugs with Ranked in terms of awarding the win incorrectly. I've seen lots of wonderful screenshots from people in the Bugs channel saying, I won the match and I lost 20 points. And this is happening because of a desync. And it's always the same. You can always tell because these games, with the screenshot, you can see the little heart, and the last round was a perfect because the opponent stopped playing. What happened is there was a desync, the opponent didn't reconnect and sufficiently roll back in time, and you just killed a dummy. But the problem is that the same thing happened on their end, and they killed you and went to the server first. Your opponent went to the server and said, hey, I won match number 2003. And then by the time you finish killing their dummy and you go to the server already knows who won the match, and they just trust your opponent, and they award you the loss. This is less of an issue with Ranked per se and more of an issue of desyncs. We had a desync detector before, and it was just issuing a lot of false positives where it would bail out a little too early, because a lot of times when you're on Wi-Fi and when you're on something else, the game state can recover. We need to, 1, look into the frequency of desyncs, see how and when they're happening. 2, build in mitigations, so more methods where the desync could fix itself, trying to figure out the discrepancy and sending additional information in case that information never got through, and how to recover. Or 3, depending on game mode, just abandoning the match. If you're playing a ranked mode, or if you're, God forbid, playing like a tourney match, and there's a desync, I think people would prefer if it just came up with a message that said, you have lost connection, no one loses points. And then if it's a tournament, you can run it back. Lots of work to be done there. Lots of good work to be done. Thank you for all the bugs. Thank you for all the data. Timing out on the matchmaker is another similar thing. I plan to be addressing a lot of that soon. Premium accounts. I've been talking about these for a while. You see a couple of people walking around with custom names and noodle patterns because they are either big tournament winners or friends and family, moderators, that sort of thing. Soon, everyone will have the ability to buy those options, to buy a premium account for a small price, small fixed one-time fee. There's a decent amount of work going into that in terms of making the sort of storefront and building integrations and testing it. Half of the work I'd say is done at this point. It just sort of got paused because I was working on all this other network infrastructure. I didn't want to be shipping out code on the API for charging your credit cards, knowing that I was about to move it like 2 weeks later. So I'm going to finish up the infrastructure first and then get to the premium accounts. But I am optimistic for this month. There's more infrastructure tech debt to do. We have successfully migrated the presence to its own server. We have a new server just for caching the leaderboard calls because our database was getting hammered too hard. The handshake server and the lobby server. These are two things that are currently being done via this weird real-time database solution, but it's had some stability problems. So I want to migrate those long-term to just a simple standalone WebSocket server. And I've already started working on the handshake side. And this all has the goal of, 1, being easier for me to control and debug and fix, be able to handle when there's downtime, be able to mitigate it, all those good things. And also, again, it's really important to me that the game is rehostable. If something were to happen to us, if people want to keep playing this game in 10 years, you can run all the servers yourselves pretty simply. And we've already started open sourcing the presence server, the cache server, the leaderboard, lots of other things. This is part of that effort too. The more time we spend stuck on this very specific real-time database product, the more vulnerable we are to them going down and the site just never working again. What did I just do to my hair? What was my hair doing? Is it okay? Oh god. Alright. Finishing art for Rice. So, exciting announcement. It's done. As of like 5 p.m. tonight. And we didn't push it out because we were afraid that people would just be playing Rice instead of watching State of the Game. So, as soon as I start the Q&A, I will tab over and start pushing it out. Very excited to share it with you all. It looks beautiful. Absolutely delicious. Big thank you to Amy for getting it done so fast. There will be a small break for beef as Amy is picking up more work, but we're very excited to have the carbs done. Look for these colors in about 10 to 20 minutes. I'll let you know. Amy's in chat. Little heart for Amy for bringing us this beautiful ricey rice. Other upcoming things. Amy is going to go back and draw us up like 1 or 2 more emotes. We got some really good suggestions in the Discord about having like a thank you emote. If someone says nice, what do you respond with, right? So I did some data, I pulled down some records, and for the last month, this was the emote usage on Tough Love Arena. There's 2 interesting metrics here. One, the total usage of the remote versus the number of unique users. Because this can give you an impression of, hey, this emote was used a lot. But if it's just like one person spamming that emote, 500 times, then it won't have that many users. This is it in terms of percentages. Also, take this all with a grain of salt. Metrics like these I'm tracking through Google Tag Manager, which is usually flagged by ad block. We're losing anywhere from like 10 to 30% of our player base with these sorts of stats. The active player count is different, but a lot of these fine-grained statistics, I use this third-party app, and ad blocker snipes it. Unfortunately, the way we're currently doing emotes is that they're tied to the number keys, and we're all out of numbers. So if we do add a thank you and maybe another emote or 2, we would have to cut some. Even though the last one has pretty low numbers, it serves a very important function. It's a necessary communication device. Same with rematch. Yeah, nah, are on the chopping block. Even though they see decent usage, I don't think they're as necessary for communication. I will say rematch is less useful than last one because it's sort of implied they're going to keep rematching. If they choose not to rematch, you can't talk to them anymore. So that's a good point. And longer term, we'll still have the images on a hard drive. We could potentially bring them back. But short term, this is another little fun thing to look forward to. Last thing before the Q&A, I want to have a little community health check. For the hard numbers on our active player count and general TLA population and our cash flow, please subscribe to our Patreon. We do a nice little financial report every couple of days into the month. If you're interested, you can pay $5 to check out some numbers. Everyone knows from watching the active player count and from trying to queue with casual and ranked that population has steadily been going down. I don't think this is incredibly surprising. We are still, a niche game. We're still in beta. We definitely had our hype moment in January when all the influencers were looking at it, when Panda Global was making videos, when Sonic Fox was tweeting about it. That gave us a lot of reach and a lot of penetration very quickly. The players we get in now is much more piecemeal. It's a lot more very small word of mouth, and just not as many people are coming to Tough Love Arena. Me and Amy can get pretty sad about this sometimes. It's not fun. It's not fun to watch any number go down. But to be clear, I still think our current numbers are very good. For an indie game, our first indie game, our first outing, I am incredibly proud of the numbers that we're pulling, of the fact that there was 40 to 50 active players today. That's a lot of people playing our video game, and that's really cool and really special, and I'm very grateful for those people. We're still in a beta. We're still in this niche genre. So again, things are all relative. I think our numbers are good. I'm proud of our numbers, but I know our numbers used to be better. And I know if you're trying to queue for casual and ranked right now, you're getting the same person a lot. That is a problem. That's something I'd love to improve. How to increase the population? There's 2 ways to improve population. One is to bring in new users. We could do just marketing. We could do ad buys or, pay an influencer or something. These are the ones we are least excited to do because right now our cash on hand is basically what's allowing me to work on the game full time. So anything we spend on a Reddit ad is 1 less week of dedicated dev time before I have to get a day job again. We are open to that as an option, but we're not really super excited about it because we haven't yet found an opportunity that feels like a sure bet or feels, worth the cost. Collaborating with other communities, influencers, where you're not really spending money, you're spending time, super open to those. These are the sorts of things that I think I had a lot of opportunities in January that I unfortunately let slip by because it was just such an overwhelming month. And I want to get back into that, and I want to do more outreach and do more on social media and connect more with the indie scene and other indie fighting games. So that's on me. Launch on native platforms to ease barrier of entry. You can play TLA on mobile, and lots of people follow the little guide and they installed a home screen to fix the scrolling issues, but it's still not really an A-class experience, and there is a hurdle. Likewise, other people, especially maybe not living in the US, it might be prohibitive to play a game where you have to re-download the assets every time you play a match. And having an offline version, having something like a Steam version, would not only help for Steam's internal recommendation engine, but also just to have an offline copy. That's really important for a number of reasons. So I also view this as an avenue for newcomers. It's just another place, another marketplace where you can find TLA and play it. However, you can't just bring in new people. I learned this at my first job from the way the sales team was conducting themselves. It doesn't matter if you bring in 100 more customers every day if none of them stick around because the product sucks. It's equally important, if not more important in my opinion, to retain the existing users. How do you retain them? New content. give them a reason to keep playing this pretty modest indie game with 6 characters. One, we could do community events like tournaments and stuff like this, stuff like streams that get people to be like, oh yeah, I like Tough Love Arena, let me check out what the news is. Oh, there's some cool stuff in here, I'm going to boot the game back up. Balance patches, we talked about this a little bit last month. You know, we're never balancing as just for the sake of it. We're not trying to shake up the game unnecessarily, but it brings lifeblood back in, and it's exciting for everyone when it's, you know, a new move or a new option. So those are also new content. That's, I think, how we retained a lot of users in like February and March, was just the game just changed every week. You had to keep coming back and keep checking it out. Single player content is what I'm veering a little bit more into now. It doesn't strictly address, you know, ranked queue, but it does mean more eyeballs on the game if there's just more things to do. And so the boss characters have been really fun for me to build. Building in the little extra features like the fact that you can unlock them. There's going to be a cool Secret Spice boss tournament this Wednesday. All these things are just reasons people will boot the game back up. Other ways for people to have fun with the game. Maybe if you play enough single player content, you'll, you know, go online and start fighting other people. And super long-term mods. UGC, user-generated content. Potentially infinite wellspring of engagement and ideas and free labor, essentially. As I've discussed on dev streams and elsewhere, that is a monumental task. So I'm very interested in it, and I want to work on it. But if I dropped everything to work on mods, you would see no progress for like the next 2 months, right? And there's a lot of things that I think are critical and provide immediate value that are worth working on first. It's on the way. It's on the roadmap. In light of this, we are proud to announce the 6-month anniversary tournament. The beta originally went live January 1st, so it's not exact. It's going to be a little bit short, but we are going to run an official tournament on June 26th. Another official tournament is long overdue. I'll be reaching out to the TOs from Quarantine Report and April Fools to see if they're interested in helping out. We've got a couple weeks to figure this out, but we're very excited to run this tournament. We're going to advertise it heavily on social media. To sweeten it a little bit, I'm going to throw in a $100 cash pot minimum, and we're going to have a matcherino in case people want to throw in more. Totally not necessary, but I know we got a couple of whales, and if they're tired of throwing gift subs in Twitch chat, you know, maybe they can just throw some money in the pot and then win the tournament and take it all back. We're looking to just have a little bit. Again, it'll be split across top 8. We want to be fair, so, you know, first we'll get a significant cut. All the details will be ironed out at a later date. And if this goes well, if we get a decent turnout and people enjoy the event, we don't need to wait 6 months. I'd be open to doing this a lot more frequently. A big barrier in the last couple of months was just how busy me and Amy both were. I am now transitioning. It's been like a month and a half, but I'm pretty officially full-time on Tough Love Arena now. So I'm very excited to start running tournaments, and I'm open to other suggestions on other things to do. Maybe just like beginner events, open to stuff. So I think that transitions us cleanly to the Q&A, which means I have to push out Rice real quick. Pushing Rice. Version 55.0 will be live it usually takes like 5 to 10 minutes. And of course, thank you to everyone who's watched so far. Again, this is a dream of mine, so thank you all for making this possible. When you add modding support, how much would you be able to edit? Would it just be characters, or could you edit the entire game? So in my mind, the plan that enables the best distribution is to mod the characters. The idea is you would create your custom character file, have your 100 sprites or whatever, and you just put them in a zip, and you would send them to me. And I would just manually review them real quick to make sure it all works and it's not too buggy. If necessary, I'm happy to deputize other people. We would definitely want to make sure it's scalable. But as a first pass, it'd be easiest if I can do the final step of integration myself with just like 20 minutes of code changes. Doesn't matter if it's OP, it doesn't matter if it's unbalanced, but as long as like it works, then I will put it in the game under a sort of sub-menu. Similar to like how boss characters are currently optional on lobbies, there'd be a sub-menu that would create potentially a big drop-down of community characters. So I still need to check the legality. You know, what if someone uploads Peter Griffin? Am I liable for IP stuff if I'm hosting that on TLA servers? There's a lot of hypotheticals here, but that is my current plan. It, in my mind, decreases the barrier to entry and increases the ease of you sharing your character with your friends and with the world. Whereas full mod support, being able to create your own Tough Love Arena, would be very empowering, but be a lot harder to run, harder to work with the online infrastructure, and would inevitably splinter the community, I believe. It would be just totally built into the character select menu. Here's the community characters, here's the mod characters. And then you can have your dream match of, you know, TLA version of Peter Griffin versus Ronald McDonald or whatever. And we'll just go full Mugen. That means, however, since you're just sending a character file and images, you are ultimately restricted by what's possible in the current engine. That said, I will be very eager and happy to add functionality that doesn't exist. My engine's pretty flexible as it is, but it does have like hard requirements, like you need to define frames for being on the ground, you need to define frames for falling through the air, and the gravity will be consistent across characters. But if someone wanted to create like, oh, this character has different gravity, I would totally add an edge case to the main code frame just for community characters, because that isn't a whole lot of complexity, and that ensures that the system I add will work for all the characters consistently. Very excited, but still very abstract. Follow-up question, what would modding be coded in? That's a good question, Cynical. The game is coded in TypeScript. I'm conflicted on this. And this really comes down to like what the tools look like and how it works when you try to write the game locally. How much of the engine am I exposing to you when you're writing your mods? Really, I'd probably just be looking for you to give me like a single JavaScript file that exports a variable. It'd be nice to have TypeScript so that you would know if you made mistakes during the development process. That's why I use TypeScript. But I would probably lean towards making a JavaScript just to make it easier to pick up and easier for people to use. It would be one of the two, though. But yeah, for people who aren't aware, this is what a character looks like right now. Oh, also Rice is up. We'll just look at this together real quick. We'll gawk. Oh! We got Rice. Alright, cool. This is actually beef and pork. So together they are 1,000 lines, which seems like a lot, but it's a lot of reused stuff. The lines are very simple. It's like, you know, when you have a lot of frames, a lot of them are just this. It's only this long because I'm actually reusing a lot of code for beef and pork. I'd say a single character, you know, without a variation would be like 700 lines. And again, very simple lines, very short, honestly a lot of copy-paste. And as I tried to build this out more, and if I'd want to make the version that, you know, you can mod, I would probably further simplify and not require you to like manually define standing frames. Some parts where I would want to exert more control and just say like, give me the sprite for your falling through the air, you don't need to write it out this way. I would try to write something a little bit more strict. And then it's really just this JavaScript file and 100 images. And then as long as I put them in the correct place and add them to the menu, then they're in the game. So the boss characters are, for example, much shorter. Like Boss Pork is 400 lines. There's a little bit of reusing from Pork, so maybe in truth this would be like 500 lines. We would definitely want you to just be giving me like a file that I would then manually inspect. We're not looking for you to inject a Bitcoin miner or something. Caro says, I do not envy your position with, you know, distribution of assets and stuff, but that's okay, honestly. I would be happy to. It's more tooling to build, but a lot of TLA has been reinventing a lot of wheels. For my first game, it's a satisfying intellectual exercise. I don't know if I want to do it a second time, but it's been fun. It's been fun. That method of modding, Paul, would there be a method to test a mod locally? Oh, there would absolutely have to be. Yeah, I would definitely want to create this in a way or ship some version of the site where as long as you put your character in like this specific folder and then maybe type the URL into an in-game menu, then it can load it dynamically into the client. That is absolutely a requirement, because I can't expect people to program characters blind. Hence the degree of tooling that needs to be created. Thoughts on adding a random rotation to lobbies and allowing hosts to move people to spectator? It wouldn't be too hard to do. I guess I'm surprised by the request. I guess I don't see the value in a random rotation. I'm so used to either the winner stays on paradigm or you're playing with friends. If I'm on a win streak with my friends, I'll just manually flip myself to spectator and then back into the queue, right? Giving the host the ability to manually boot people, I would totally do that. I think that's worth doing. I can just probably do it this week. That sounds like a very simple change. Can you send pictures of your cat? If Amy is in chat and is so inclined, she can share pictures, but I don't really have easy access. But he's a sweet boy, and he was on camera more in our last apartment because the streaming setup was in the living room and he would wander over. But right now I have the door closed for noise. So add a cat cam to streams? I would love to, but our cat is very, I don't want to say poorly behaved, but you can't wrangle our cat. Our cat will just hide in a dark place, and then when he wants your attention, he is very aggressive about it. He's a very sweet boy, and I love him. I've seen cat cams where she's like, oh yeah, my cat's just chilling, no big deal. Like, our cat's not like that. Our cat's either, like, sleeping somewhere dark or flying around the apartment and meowing very loudly, hence why the door's closed. Why was carb 5H made -5? So it used to be -7, meaning that it was punishable by lights, and I thought that that was overly punishing. It created this true dead zone where if you were just outside of slap range, like you really didn't want to whip. If you misread the distance a little bit, it was potentially really disastrous. I still wanted carb H to be minus. I wanted the turn to be over, but I brought it back down just enough so that like if you 5H'd a little close, you didn't accidentally eat a whole combo punish. What's in my cup? This is Coca-Cola. Oh, Grum asked what's on the cup. Oh, thank you for asking. This is... Well, it's kind of hard to see with the liquid gone. This is the original logo for Spebsqua, the Society for the Preservation and Enrichment of Barbershop Quartet Singing in America, now rebranded to BHS, Barbershop Harmony Society. It is the international, although mostly American-centric, society for barbershop singing, of which I have been a proud member in the past. Very cool hobby. I only stopped doing it because of the sort of time commitment. Come to my streams and you'll hear barbershop music sometimes. Wilton asks, what will you do when everything on the to-do is done, in every category? Come up with more stuff to do, or make a new game? Quit game dev forever and go be a teacher and live on a farm or something. The real answer is that will never happen. The to-do will inevitably grow faster than I can complete it. I hope to someday complete everything that's currently on the to-do, but I know that software development is never truly over, especially if you're online and you're playing a game that could always use more content. The work will never be done. My question is that because Garlic's backdash cancel move him forward a lot, he ends up just meeting himself a lot of the time when he tries to use it. Did you know about that? And if you do, would you be willing to fix that? Oh yeah, the fact that if you dash back and then do roundhouse, you still have the scooch forward? Yeah, I could look into removing the scooch. That is a perfectly reasonable request. That would be a great candidate for something to do on stream tomorrow. Would you be interested in reaching out to McLeod Gaming Team and trying to get a TLA character as an assistant Framemakers? That sounds like a great idea. Oh yeah, Framemakers, the like platform Mugen. I saw they had all those indie tie-ins like Octodad and Rivals of Aether. That's a very good idea, Cynical. I should reach out to them. Let me make a little note. Esid says, how do you feel about points for winning and losing 2-0 versus 2-1? I don't think that's necessary. The whole point of playing 2 out of 3 in the first place is just to mitigate and reduce variance. Whether you won super convincingly or you lost one round because they randomed you out, that's supposed to be answered by the fact that you had a winning record in best 2 out of 3. So I don't think that's necessary. Are you and Amy super amazing people? Yes, no. I think that we're pretty cool, but, you know, we're just people. And we are ultimately personas filtered through this stream and through Discord and everything else. Just people on the internet. Karo says, I'm pretty sure you can download replay inputs using secret dev tools, but there's no way to go back to old versions to do anything with it. Yeah, you could still load the replays in, but you're just replaying the inputs, and you might get to just a wrong game state. If you were playing a replay and the final blow was swipe and it did just enough chip to kill, and then I nerf the swipe chip so it does a little bit less, and then you try to play that old replay, swipe won't kill, and then both characters will just stand around for 20 seconds. Those replays are functionally worthless. That's why I delete the replays whenever I do a balance patch version. It's just confusing. It doesn't really help anyone. Oh, Amy posted a cat. Oh yeah, that's Pepper. PK Bipter says, I want to become an indie game dev. Where do you recommend I start? Not the way I started. You should use an engine. Writing your own engine is a lot of work. I only did it because I was very passionate about how it should work. I wanted to have full control over every little detail to make sure I could tune the performance and the networking. I was also very familiar with Canvas and little JS games and experiments. I've made a lot of little projects over the years. I've made lots of little goofy things over the years in JavaScript and in Canvas, and so this was my comfort zone essentially. Oh, let's switch to the other one. Sorry, now I'm happy showing off my old tool. Let's put on we'll put on this one. So, sorry, I got a little distracted there, PK Bipter. Use Unity or something. Use Unity, make a little prototype, just make a little puzzle game, make a little action game, make a platformer, and either you'll be like, this is way too much work and confusing, I hate it, or you'll be like, that was super empowering, I'm going to show like 2 friends, and then throw it away and make something else. The joy of creation is the reason to get into it, in my opinion. Do you think the distribution of spicy ranked characters is in a good spot? Last I checked it was pretty good, but we can reevaluate. Let's pop on over to Tefleverina. Okay, looking at it now, we got some onions and we got some noodles and we got some rices. No beefs, which is surprising because I know we've had some really good beef showings in tournament. There's the first beef at 15. I think this is okay. This is a lot of noodles and rices, but I also think that they probably do better in like a random ranked match with, you know, maybe questionable connections, so I'm not overly concerned. But it's a fair question. Kway says, I honestly feel like it'd be best to market the game outside of the FGC. Most of the longtime TLA players haven't played, don't like many traditional fighters. That's true. Yeah, we have a lot of converts from platform games especially. That is a very good point. I'm still going to enjoy going to stuff like CEO just because I want to go to CEO, right? But it's a fair point in terms of doing broader outreach like Framemakers. Caro says, I disagree with some of the fundamental design decisions by Godot, but it's probably where odds start. I second that recommendation. I have a friend who's made a bunch of really cool prototypes in Godot, and they're like not a coder at all. Having not used it, I would second Godot. Can't wait for this game to have app offline. Yeah. We'll definitely have it before we do any in-person stuff. I have like a really makeshift way of doing it, but I think it still requires the command line. Do you think there will ever be a big offline tournament for the game? I would love to, Puzzle Box. My dream is to be at an EVO or CEO or Combo Breaker and have a side tournament. I think online tournaments should theoretically always be bigger just because you cast a huge net compared to the number of people that can fly to Florida in December. But I'm very excited to do offline stuff. So many TLA players play Melee like it's half of us or more. Hey, Melee's a good game. How would this game do offline tournament? Asks Busy Don. With an offline build. The game is completely runnable offline. You just need to pass a setting and have all the images in a folder, basically. And then you can play it locally. There's a local versus mode. And in fact, I think Abic was telling me that they were playing TLA at some locals just last week, and how much easier it was to whiff punish and how OP Onion was. Yet another reason not to buff Onion. Grum says, I'm sure someone will run a side tournament at EVO. I mean, I'll be there and I'll run a side tournament. I just need to figure out how, and can taunts be added in the games? Taunts are not planned. Input space is already too tiny. I don't want to add a fourth button just for taunts. Plant says, thank you so much for the fighting game I'm okay at. That's exactly what I want to hear, Plant. We're here to serve the underrepresented 3-button fighting game community. We gotta find some sort of combo that was really close or barely killed. I was thinking about it. I was thinking about we gotta find a clip of someone wasting burst and then Onion getting a counter hit combo at 80%. Just like counter hit sweep. So if you ever see that, please clip it. You mentioned that you tried making a Skullgirls double character for a hot second. What was that like? I shifted all the characters to white, and I tried combining some of their normals. I really gained an appreciation for double, that as much of animation they reused or recycled with double. I know they took some moves that kind of were on the cutting room floor, like Phileas Slide, and now double has it. There's a lot of unique animation double in all of their neutral movement and in just the little transformation in and out of all the characters' moves. When I had a character that was just harsh transitioning from noodle whip into onion standing into beef jump, it just looked confusing. It looked bad. You don't realize how much effort they put into double, how much transition animation they added to double until you see double without that, and it did not look good. So that could be possible with more custom animation, but if we're going to animate that much, at that point, I'd rather just have a fourth character, or seventh and eighth character. Juice didn't seem worth the squeeze, and also, I think we're already leaning so heavily on variations. Someone else mentioned, can you have even further variations? So, what if you had an onion, but Hopcake, went a little less far for a little more damage? These sorts of, minor trade-offs. I think we're already burning a lot of goodwill on how small our roster really is. If we had our game and it has, 18 characters, but it's really only 3, I think people would see through that. I took the energy I had of, I want to make a cool character with, crazy moves, and I put that into Secret Spice. And I found boss characters to be very fertile ground for doing that more experimental stuff that probably isn't very balanced, but can be fun to do. And I would encourage people to do that with their modded characters as well. Would you ever add a no-wall stage? No. Corners are very important for 2D fighters. Otherwise, Onion and Garlic just run away forever against Noodle and Rice. Power Chicken says that Onion goes from bottom 2 to top 3 in offline, I swear. Who's saying that Onion's in bottom 2? Of the Slums says, as an Onion main, Onion is the worst character in the game. No bias whatsoever here, by the way. You're 100% right. Gotta buff Onion. Counter hits do more damage on the first hit and more damage on the 8th on hit. Damage bonus on the first hit and then less harsh scaling. I explain it in the frame data menu if you want to check that out on the game. I can just show you here. Combos normally go 100, 100, 90, 80, 70, bada bada, down to 20 forever. On counter hit, they go 150, 190, da da da, to 40 forever. So if you get a straight hit, you get some bonus damage, but it really shines when you do the 20 hit combos with Onion or Garlic. Plant asks, so when I play lobby with my friends, it says allow bosses. Does that mean I can play Secret Spice? Only if you have already unlocked Secret Spice. You do need to unlock the boss characters on your own. They are normally disabled in online play, so it makes them pickable, but sadly you gotta work for it. Bringing back some of that OG unlocking frustration. Premium accounts get Secret Spice. So on the one hand, I would totally be comfortable doing that as a gift. You don't have to work for it. Here, just have all the extra content immediately. Same with the plaid colors. But I also see the plaid colors and Secret Spice as, essentially content, as something to grind for and something that could be fun to grind for. And I feel like if I just immediately unlocked all of it, I'm depriving the people of essentially content, of gameplay. I asked this earlier, but would you ever make it so you can queue both ranked and casual at the same time? Probably not. It all depends on how I architect it, but you'd want to make sure you don't like get a race condition of you just match with someone casual and then you immediately match with someone in ranked. Again, that's something that the matchmaking server could theoretically solve. It'd make the UI a lot less clear because if you're queuing for ranked, you need to pick your character ahead of time, but if you're queuing for casual, you don't. I'd be more excited about adding the queue from training mode. Pick your ranked character and then you're in training mode, and then when you get a match, you just go into the match, and then you go back to training mode. I get the gist of your question, which is, you know, I want to run both queues because I want to just match with a human being. But what we can definitely do is at least give you something to do while you're waiting for the match. Would you ever think about holding a tournament with boss characters legalized for fun? Thank you for asking. There's a Secret Spice tournament this Wednesday. I do believe you still need to unlock them. I haven't added anything special for it. Maybe in the future, but right now it's too short notice. For the YouTube video. Gotta make it clean. Thank you all for stopping by the second monthly State of the Game stream for Tough Love Arena. Again, you can play the game for free right now at toughlovearena.com. It will be free forever. Thanks to all the people who came by the stream. Thank you for watching and supporting and giving feedback and donating on Patreon and playing in tournaments and everything else. We really appreciate it, and we're going to do our best to make the game as good as it can be and give you a reason to stick around. So thank you all. We'll be back for the next State of the Game, the first Monday of July. I don't know when it is. Probably about a month from now. Till then, developer stream every Tuesday, Thursday. We've got the big tournament on June 26th. So I recommend you sub to our Twitter at twitter.com/toughlovearena or join our Discord where we will definitely be providing more details announcing dates and sign-ups and everything. Thank you all, and that's good night. Goodbye, everyone. Good night.